Whether you're building new trail or doing maintenance on existing trail, removing plant life, pruning shrubs, and cutting tree limbs can be a major task.
Trail corridors on standard non-motorized multi-use trails are generally 6 feet wide and 10 feet tall. Check with the land manager on your project for the standards.
Corridor clearing involves a variety of tasks, including digging out grasses and small shrubs, pruning shrubs and small tree limbs, removing large tree limbs, and dispersing cuttings from trail corridor clearing.
The pickmatic and some of its lighter relatives are used to dig dirt and grub vegetation out of the tread surface. I'm going to use this one. When using a pickmatic, we never swing it over our head. Hold it out vertically, tilt it slightly, and swing.
In sparsely vegetated areas like this one, you want to make sure to balance the amount of vegetation you have with the requirement of corridor clearing. The trail whiskers you see here indicate where the tread is going to run. So it looks like we're going to have to remove this little shrub altogether and do something about these other two.
These shrubs are basal stem like most plants in the desert. So if we just came in with loppers and cut it all the way down to ground level, what's actually going to happen is all these branches are going to grow back more vigorously from the root ball. So in fact, we'll probably have to take all 3 of these shrubs out.
There might be something else that we can do in this situation. We might be able to just move the entire tread over a little bit, removing 2 shrubs completely, but saving 1 small shrub. You're welcome, little guy.
Trail corridors should provide users with unrestricted passage and adequate viewing distance around turns. We obviously don't have that here. We're going to have to do something about these branches coming into the trail corridor.
Loppers are used for pruning small shrubs and small tree limbs. These are called bypass loppers because the blade passes the fixed stop. Bypass loppers are the best type for all-around use. Loppers come in many sizes, so be sure to use the largest one you can comfortably handle. When using your loppers, you want to make sure that you hold them at the end of the handles for maximum cutting power and not to force the cut, otherwise you may damage yourself or the tool. Typically, we would suggest not to cut anything larger than the size of the handle, which is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. For anything larger, switch to a saw. Saws are used to cut tree limbs that are too large or hard to reach with a lopper. Straight saws like this serve well for smaller limbs. The long pole saw is for cutting higher branches. We have a hard hat and goggles here to remind us to wear protection when cutting large or high limbs.
When pruning small limbs or sawing slightly larger ones, make your cuts as close to perpendicular to the branch as possible and near a branch point. A branch point is where the limb to be cut emerges from a larger branch.
We also want to preserve a natural-looking appearance to the trees and shrubs that we limb. This Palo Verde is definitely intruding into the trail corridor. There is one way that we can fix this. This graphic illustrates what is called a haircut trim. The corridor definitely would be clear, but not very natural looking. Actually, it's downright ugly. Let's see if we can do something better. This is more like it, a well-trimmed tree that retains a natural, balanced appearance.
Remember that tree that was in my way earlier? It's time to take care of it. The trail crew's already come through and gotten rid of all the small branches, so we have good access to the trunk here where we're going to cut it down. Remember, when taking care of bigger branches, there's a real risk of injury for both people and the tree itself. Stay safe.
Here is where we will make 3 cuts to remove the remainder of this limb. The first cut will be here. This cut prevents the heavy limb from stripping the protective bark from below this point as it falls. The second cut, a little further out, will actually cause the limb to fall. The third cut is simply to remove the ugly remaining stub. In this situation, we are removing a section of a large and long tree limb. If we were removing this limb at the tree trunk, we would have one more concern. We have added a vertical trunk in order to illustrate this point. Notice that cuts 1 and 3 are a few inches away from the trunk. If we were to attempt to remove the limb at the trunk, we would likely damage the collar, located at the point where a branch emerges from the trunk. The collar contains chemicals that prevent infectious agents from entering the tree through the cut we are about to make.
We have our hard hat, our safety glasses, our gloves, a good escape route up the hill here, and a good pruning saw. We're ready to make our first cut. All right, we look good. Jill, do you want us to take the second cut?
Sure.
Thanks.
Now the second cut is actually going to free this limb up entirely from the tree, so this is where we have our greatest risk. Tim is going to come in here and just basically monitor the branch as it falls. He's not going to grab onto it or touch it at all unless we need to. Basically, he's just going to make sure that it doesn't twist or move in any unpredictable fashion. Okay, it's cutting. You ready?
Yep.
Great. Tim, will you do cut number 3?
Sure will.
Thanks.
So we're going to come in here with cut number 3 and just get rid of this ugly stalk. Finally, what do we do with the material generated by our corridor clearing work? Avoid throwing larger items as you may injure a coworker or end up with something like this. It often makes sense to cache cuttings and other debris in piles, as was done here. Store it for later use in trail closure work or to dress any scars left by your work.
It turns out this material isn't needed anywhere else, so we're going to go ahead and tuck this with vegetation similar to it. We could do this by the small Palo Verde, but it's way too close to the trail. So instead we're going to take all of this and tuck it back here behind this much larger Palo Verde. Right.
In this video series, we frequently talk about minimizing the visible marks of our trail work. We should always apply the principles of leave no trace whenever outdoors.
With a little care, we can extend those principles to trail work as well. Trail users want to experience nature without the distracting byproducts of trail construction and maintenance work.